It's the pastry best associated with the month of January. At the start of every year, the galette des rois, or king cake, fills bakeries across France, and there's one to suit everyone's taste. Hello and welcome to France in Focus. Now, you'll want to stay tuned because by the end of the show, you'll have the recipe for the best galette des rois in the Greater Paris region. The recipe is just behind me. Before that, though, let's take a look at how the galette des rois actually came about. So Nadine, in terms of the theories that exist surrounding la galette des rois, there are several. They're not all religious, though, are they, Nadine?
Well, there's no religious significance whatsoever. It's true that we tend to associate the kings with the three kings in the nativity scene, who are in St. Matthew's Gospel, those who came to bring the precious gifts, gold, frankincense and myrrh. However, the king's cake is more likely linked to an ancient tradition which can be dated back to the Romans and which took place just before our Christmas. They held a banquet for the winter solstice, which was called the Saturnalia. The masters hosted their slaves at the table for a feast. They picked a king with games like jacks or dice. So it was always a game of chance, which could name a slave as king of the table.
Today, when you get the charm, you're quite happy. It wasn't always the case, though.
Yes, it's true that the person who found the charm had to invite all of those present for a meal the following year. And at the Epiphany, when we share the king's cake, we're usually in a big group. So some used to avoid the expense by swallowing the charm, which at that time would have been a bean, so very digestible. Then, in the 1870s, some clever pastry chefs replaced the bean charm with a real charm made of porcelain. It brings good fortune to find the charm at the beginning of the year. It forecasts a very good year.
La galette des rois is something that's celebrated a lot in France, even at the Élysée Palace. Each year there's a celebration there, but there's no charm and there's no crown.
During the French Revolution, it was obviously a tradition which quickly became highly controversial. It was clearly no longer acceptable to mention royalty, and the king's cake almost disappeared. At this time, several bakers started calling it the freedom cake or the equality cake. So the custom was preserved, and today the Bakers and Pastry Chefs Union brings an enormous one to the Élysée Palace, maybe 1.5 meters in diameter. It's really very big. And like you say, there's no charm, so no one gets to be king.
Nadine, thank you very much for talking us through the history of la galette des rois.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Every year in France, competitions are held across the country to decide on the best galette des rois. This year, it was the Dupont Tea Room in the Greater Paris region which won the coveted title. We're here to find out whether or not the title was well deserved. Yasmine Menacer, you're head baker here at the Dupont Tea Room. Firstly, a big congratulations to you on winning this year's coveted prize. Now, last year you came second. What did you change this year to make your recipe the winning recipe?
Compared to last year, I didn't change anything in the recipe because I was so close to winning first place. So this time I focused more on perfecting the baking of the galette, as well as the scoring, the pattern we draw on top. So for the puff pastry, I stuck with the inverted type, and for the filling, it's the same recipe.
Now, you spoke about puff pastry before. Of course, that's a key ingredient for the galette des rois. What's the secret to a good puff pastry?
For a delicious and foolproof puff pastry, it's better to use an inverted puff pastry. Unlike the traditional pastry, where we encase the butter in the dough, in inverted puff pastry, we encase the dough in the butter. We roll it out, fold it, roll it out again, fold it, creating successive layers of butter and dough. The most challenging part is working with it, because the butter quickly returns to room temperature. So not everyone might be able to use this technique.
Now, last year we saw a real increase, Yasmine, in the prices of the galette des rois, notably because of energy prices, raw materials. Has the price of the galette des rois increased again this year?
Yes, prices have soared this year as well. That's why the galette that won the prize costs 65 euros. It's for 10 people, but that's the price you pay for quality. It's mainly due to the rise in energy costs. Butter is expensive, almond powder is also a luxury product, and labor costs have also increased. For us, independent bakers, daily life has become very expensive. However, for the industrial producers, they buy in large quantities, tons, and they can get a discount. But for us, it's different. We feel the crunch of inflation, and it does impact our prices.
Now, your galette de roi is made on site. It's homemade, if you will. Not all galette de roi are made on site. Can you tell the difference between those that are perhaps sold in the supermarkets and those that are made in boulangeries like yours?
Supermarkets and large retailers work with low-cost raw materials. Therefore, it's a lesser quality. There's a standardization of galettes because they largely use machines, whereas in artisanal work, we do everything by hand, except for pastry rolling. We no longer use rolling pins, but we use machines called laminators. So that makes all the difference. Not all our galettes will be identical, but it's about craftsmanship and the French know-how, striving to deliver the best quality every day.
Now, we promised our viewers that you'd give us a cooking lesson to show us how you make your excellent galette de roi. Shall we give it a try?
Avec plaisir. On y va.
Let's go.
To make a galette, I need minimum 3 days to knead and score. Scoring means drawing patterns on the galette. I need that time because inverse puff pastry is a slightly more complicated technique. You need to prepare the butter and the dough beforehand. For the layers, we alternate butter and dough to achieve a beautiful puff pastry. Now I'll take my piping bag and fill the center of the disc with frangipane cream, which is a mix of almonds, butter. We use good quality butter for the puff pastry and the almond cream. There's also sugar, eggs, and a small amount of pastry cream to lighten the filling. Starting from the center, I make a spiral of frangipane. And let's not forget the traditional lucky charm. We place it on the edge, never in the center. It would be a shame to cut into it, so we keep it away from the center so it remains a surprise until the end. I carefully push out the air from the galette to gradually seal these two parts. And then I'll pop the galette into the fridge for at least an hour. Next, I'll proceed with the marking to create patterns on the top of the galette, drawing the beautiful design that helped us win the contest. This step takes a bit longer. Usually, if I make a diamond-shaped design, as in traditional galettes, it takes about 30 seconds per galette. But this one will take me 5 minutes. And to finish, I mark the edges. It's the final touch. And now the galette is ready for baking.
Wow, look at that. It looks absolutely delicious. Thank you very much indeed. For those of you at home watching France in Focus, thank you for watching. Time now to taste this galette de roi.